There we go. So excited that everyone's here for this really important topic. I have to say that as I sort of started thinking about this topic, I had the recognition that this was something that I struggled with as a young person. And boy, that was really, I always think of myself as somebody who has definitely struggled with depression, but I guess anxiety was there as well. I also, this topic also made me think about sort of media, popular media. And now that there's I think it's, Kelsey and I were talking, and we were saying that the fact that there's a TV show called Hoarders and about this disorder is really probably helpful for information and like people getting to have language to talk about it. But I always feel really uneasy with mental illness or people's struggles as entertainment. Like it just feels so yucky to me in a lot of ways. And I also feel like that show is about entertainment and doesn't really do any of the work to understand what's going on and how to help. So that is why I'm so excited to have Kathy Reboul here today. Kathy is a friend of Worcester Addresses Childhood Trauma. We just love her and love her work. She's a social worker, justice-based, has worked in youth development. And this is an interest area and a specialty that she's developed. And I'm super excited to have her talk about it and hopefully give us some tools for better understanding. Kathy, I have made you a co-host, so hopefully you can, do you want me to do your slides or do you want to do them? I can do them if you'd like.
Yeah, could you do them? That would take something off my plate, and I'd love that.
I would be happy to do that. And I know that it can be really hard to kind of do both things. Let me just switch my view. I'm so glad sorry for link problems. I'm so glad everybody made it here, but I know it was a little bit of a struggle. Everyone seeing that okay? If so, I am going to mute myself and hand it on over to Kathy. And Kathy, you can let us know kind of how you want to do questions or chats or whatever you like. And Kelsey and Deb and I are here at your service to help you.
All right. So thank you so much for being here. I see some people I don't know, which I'm really excited about because people are wanting to learn. And I see a lot of like friendly faces that I know from different places. So I want to thank all of you for coming too, for supporting me. So I actually got interested in this topic. I remember there was during COVID, there was a meme that said, I thought I'd get my place all cleaned up if I had enough time. Oops, that wasn't it. Time didn't help. So I just love that sort of that really I think for a lot of people was helpful. And I realized, wait a second, I'm struggling with too much stuff. Um, I'm struggling with the fact that there's some stuff, even when I have a lot of time, I have a lot of mystery books. I'm not reading them. So I'm having some stuff that's not working. I don't like, and I tried different programs and it wasn't super helpful. And then I found the Buried and Treasure workshop and I took it and then I ended up teaching it and I started really starting to realize, some of the stuff of how you help people is a little bit of a myth. Some of the books on decluttering don't necessarily help depending on where you're at. So let's go to the next slide. So who's welcome here? First of all, people just want to learn. If you don't know anything about the topic, I'm really glad you're here. I think the show Hoarders can give an impression of hoarding that I think it can be really harmful because people think, well, I'm not like that, so I don't need help. Well, maybe they do. Or they can also they don't want to say they have too much stuff because it's like there's such a stigma. So I sort of, if you're here to learn, I love you being here. The second group is people who have lived experience with lots of stuff. It's getting in your way. You may not be sure how to deal with it. The third group I really want here is people affected by someone else's clutter. So it could be a spouse, you could be the child of someone who has a lot of stuff, and you're trying to figure out, how do I talk with that person? Another group that's welcome is any professional that because of their work is interacting with people and their stuff. So you could be a landlord or a firefighter, and or that kind of person. So we want to include them because sometimes I think we want to make sure they're learning actually what's helpful to help people. And then, of course, anyone and everyone else is welcome. All right, next slide. So I'd love to people just to pop up and speak up, not even get called on. Unmute yourself and tell me, what do you think hoarding is, and where have you learned about hoarding? And we're not going to use the word hoarding the whole time. But we're going to just start there, and then we're going to switch over to maybe more gentle language. But just starting off, I'd love to have people tell me, what is hoarding, and where did you learn about it?
I mean, I don't know if I'm going to do the full definition of hoarding, but I know that, as a clinician, I've dealt with some patients. And I think one of the main reasons I wanted to be on this training, and I'm just really, really appreciative that we're talking about these topics that I think are very hardly ever get talked about, is that I'm doing a lot of work with Renaissance Medical Group in our Worcester housing. And in general, people are losing their housing because they're not passing inspection, and we're seeing a lot of issues in regarding to hoarding, and that's really putting at risk. So we want to make sure that this isn't a topic that I have dealt with some patients, but not anything I'm like super well versed at as a clinician in my years. So I'm really excited to learn because we're encountering it more and more, and I had a meeting about it a couple weeks ago with housing, and this is something that's really coming up quite a bit. And we want to make sure that we know how we're helping the patients that we're dealing with. So I guess I don't think I really answered the question per se, but thank you so much for doing this. Thank you, Amy, and thank you for the group, because it's something that's really needed and we're seeing. And we want to make sure we're not just going in and saying, oh my God, clean up this mess, look at this trash, because there's something personal attached, right? There's something going on as to why this is happening. That much I do know.
Yeah.
And so saying, coming in, and I know that property management isn't going to do, which is why they're calling in, or they're calling us in. But we want to make sure that we pass this training on to the clinicians, that we
Absolutely.
understand this well, and why this is happening, and
I
help
love,
people help maintain their housing, because that's a whole other crisis.
of course, yeah, we want to keep people in their housing. A lot of times I hear people say, I'm getting in trouble with the fire department came in and now they're saying you got to clean out. And I love the idea of talking to people well, because that can be an issue. That people can talk in a way that's harmful and sort of puts people in freeze mode, and they get sort of overwhelmed and they can't take action. How can we support them in taking action but especially when they may need to? Who else has
And
some ideas on hoarding?
Kathy, this is
Yeah.
Darcia Diaz from CMHA. I think it's also essential because we're also noticing it in the shelter system when we're doing, our required inspections. Families accumulate a lot very quickly in a limited amount of space. So it does cause them to get failed inspections, which causes them to get non-compliance, which puts them, when it's reoccurring, in a circumstance that could cause them to lose their shelter services. So this is so essential, and I'm grateful for this training as well for our
Great.
families and for our own personal knowledge and background. So thank you.
Yeah. Who feels like they're here because I've got a problem, I've got too much stuff? Who's is someone feeling like that? Bill.
Yeah, I was going to say, to answer the question, not having a fear of throwing things out, and or not having a place to put things, like a filing cabinet for certain kind of paper, so all the papers start piling up in different places. So I am definitely I'm not only a client, but I'm the president.
Okay. I love that reference. Yes, excellent. Thank you. Yeah, when I taught the BIT, I'm like, yeah, I'm here for me too. Yes, Judy.
Yeah, just a brief comment on a different type of hoarding that I learned. I'm a child of parents of the Depression era, and the grandparents, and so they didn't throw things away. I mean, they kept string, you know, if something came, they would wrap it up on something, rubber bands. But the interesting thing, I didn't view it as so much as hoarding because my mother was a very neat gatherer or keeper. So it wasn't in piles. I mean, she had her butter containers were clean and stacked with, you know, this high. Paper bags, all those were rolled very neatly. And when she passed away and it was my job, I knew, but then I started opening cupboards and it was kind of a museum of things. So anyway, what I learned was that hoarding can be done very neatly.
Yeah, I like you bringing that up. We've really seen that. We've seen people with too much stuff that doesn't work for them, and they're kind of getting, yeah, I love that.
It's very organized.
Yeah, and we've had people where we go in and it's all dusted and it's all done, but yet it's too much. Yeah,
and it's followed me because hadn't really thought about. My husband points it out that I keep things that I don't need. They're not overrunning the place. I make room for them and stack things. So that's my type of hoarding and how I learned about it. So
okay, great. So we're gonna take Laurie. We'll take you first.
Thank you. Yeah, I love what everyone is sharing, and same as Judy. You know, my dad he was an older dad, and he grew up in the Depression, and then my grandmother on my mom's side, same thing, and so we had generations of stuff in our house, and you know, some of it was precious, and some of it was you know, stuff that we could get rid of, and it really all came to light for me what this really was when I had to clean out the house, when I took my mom with me and we moved, and it was really traumatic for her, and traumatic for me in different ways, but I started to learn a little bit about my own behaviors and the things that I had accumulated over my life, and while she was one of, you know, my family was like the neat version, I'm not. I'm a cluttered person, and I still need to get rid of a lot of things, and I get overwhelmed by it. So I've kind of seen it from all these different angles. When it came down to emptying my father-in-law's house a few years back, I said, I can't do it again. I just did that with my parents' house, and I viewed it in this light of hoarding, in sort of like in relation to kind of OCD behaviors, and we ended up hiring someone because I couldn't look at all those things and have to decide with each thing, is this worth keeping or not? Because I needed none of it. I already had a house full of things. So I feel like I've seen it from so many different angles, but I'm also a social worker and I do community outreach. And so I'm having clients that are experiencing this in a multitude of ways as well. So I really thank you for having this.
You're welcome. So we're gonna have one more person share, and then I want to move on just for the sake of time. Yeah.
I think another person named Lori had her hand raised.
Yeah, she had her hand up. Yeah.
Yeah. First time I really recognized it when my mom sent me from Arizona with my grandparents to put them in a nursing home back in Minnesota because she thought she could take care of them. So I helped assist clean out their house. And there was more stuff that was ruined by animals, we'll say, in brand new clothing. I mean, just the ceiling in the basement was floor to top, and I was just kind of like a little overwhelmed. I just started breaking stuff out. My aunt's like, I think I can wash that. I said, Charlotte, go ahead. I'm just hauling stuff out. This was after I'd been there, and I don't know what relatives went through, and like it was just a big mess. But they didn't clean up. They just took things that they wanted, and just to see that.
Bag and put it in the drawer next to the stove, Joe.
Can we mute Anne? Oh, thank you. Great. I'm sorry. Yes, we interrupted you for a second. My mistake. You wanted to.
That's all right.
Okay.
So it was like that was more horrifying because I have a lot of relatives in that area. But the other part, I started dating a woman was a while back. I didn't know really. I just knew about my grandparents, kind of like whatever, because it was about a year after that. But she was like stacked, and she had a kid. She had a 3-bedroom place. And one day she was at school, and I thought, well, I'm going to clean out this middle room. I didn't think she was, I mean, I thought she was gonna have a court. I says, the stuff's all down in the trash. We can look. I said, there was really nothing in it except for cutouts and clippings of magazine. I mean, I made it into a really nice office for her, but I didn't realize the impact on it until like 20 some years later now. And we're still friends too. So, but hers is more organized where it's in the clear box packed, stacked up. But my mother has issues. She's organized, very clean, but she's got as much junk as my grandma did.
Yeah, but it's
So,
more organized. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
but it's organized and it's not destroyed by critters, we'll say.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
kind of thing.
And I think it's good to point out, because I think on the show orders, you think everyone has critters, everyone has this. And the reality is some people just have more stuff than they can handle. Okay, great. So next slide. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to answer this question myself. Are the word hoarder, calling someone a hoarder, and hoarding helpful? In general, I think a lot of people say it's not super helpful. No one says, oh, thank you, you called me a hoarder, now I feel motivated to work. Most people don't say that. I will tell you the 2 times it is helpful, there's a lot of fight for having insurance companies pay for services. We may end up being in the position where sometimes a therapist or someone helping might have to like check a box and say someone's a hoarder to get services. We're actually fighting for service, so we don't want to. We want to fight the word, but not so much that we avoid people getting services. Also, family members, they may feel like, I want to use the word. It's a lot. I want to use the word. And they may feel validated. So if you have someone who's a child of a hoarder, if we're using polite words, it might almost overwhelm them. So we want to validate people's experience. On the other hand, if I work with people and talk with people, I'm never going to use the word. I'm going to use the words that they use. So they may say, I'm a big collector. And I'll say, okay, what if your collection works for you? So we have a dialogue, but I don't feel we need to put that word out there. I think that word can actually be harmful. So, like I said, professional depression, I might do that. And Bill says, struggling with too much stuff. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Bill. That's a great way of looking at it. Okay, next slide. I'm not really keeping up with the chat. I will go back at some point. All right. So just for a moment, we're going to go scary technical. Right, I said it right on the slide. It will get better, I promise. We're just going to go technical quick. So one, we're going to look at what does DSM-3 say? All right. And we're just going to do this quick. I've just got to make it bigger so I can read it. There we go. One, when you have trouble getting rid of stuff, and it may not be valuable. So, Judy mentioned string, something like that. This difficulty, there's a need to save items, and there's a lot of distress when getting rid of them. The difficulty with having stuff results in so much stuff that your spaces get congested. So for example, the example I'll give is people can't eat at a kitchen table because it's completely full. People have stuff on their bed that they have to move or they have to sleep with, bags of stuff on their bed. So looking at, is your space impacted? And then looking at, does it cause distress? Does it interfere with relationships? Some people will talk about their spouse or things. 5 and 6 are kind of interesting. The hoarding, they use that word, it's not attributable to a medical condition. So you might have someone who has something going on, and you might need to treat the medical condition first. If you have someone with a mobility issue and they can't get the stuff together to declutter, then that's an issue. You might need to first deal with a medical thing. And then you might need to say, okay, you have a medical condition. You only have energy from 5 to 6 p.m. We're going to work on it from 5 to 6 p.m. We're not going to start you off at 9 in the morning because that's what, your medical condition is harder than. And the other thing is, it's not better explained by another issue. So it could be someone has depression, they have OCD, some kind of cognitive function. In that situation, we want to treat that, because if I've got someone who's severely depressed, I got to look at that. I've got to treat that. So my 2 points with 5 and 6 is you might need to be treating something else. And a big thing for me is I see a lot of trauma, and you might need to also have a therapist at the same time, or some kind of treatment of trauma, whatever that looks like. And then you may need to adjust, keeping in mind, I know some people who work directly with people who are hoarding, and they'll adjust. They'll say, okay, we can work at this hours. I can help you. My job will be to physically move stuff out because you don't have the ability or energy. And I can set up a box that's close to a comfy chair where you can work because that'll work out. Okay, next slide. So let's have an easier, softer way of looking at things. And I love what Bill said. What are other ways you can describe the horrible H word? Is there another way to describe it that works for you? Bill, do you want to repeat what you said in the chat? I'd love that.
Yes, I love the statement. I wish I could take credit, but I think you said it earlier. Struggling with too much stuff.
Yep, great. All right. What about other people's or words that help you that are a little bit softer?
I like accumulation.
Okay. Okay. I see Susan talks about a collector. Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple other things that people want to share as words that they feel are helpful to them. Okay, all right. But I've heard things like collector. I've heard things like, I'm curating. Someone in the chat is talking about clutter. I've got to make the chat a little bigger so I can see it. Let me just check back. Creating space, looking at it from that point of view, what is your goal? Collector, curator. Okay, I got a second person going for curator. So I want to look at it. Let's talk about rivers, feelings, and dams. And one of the things is a river, if you're a spot in the river, things flow in and things flow out. And I think that that's one thing you want to support people in doing, or you want to do yourself, is I got 10 gifts for Christmas. Do I have space for them? Do I need to get rid of something else? Do I need to get rid of things? Maybe your aunt gives you stuff that are horrible, you just don't like it, and you can say, thank you so much, Aunt Madge. I love it that you think of me, and then you give it to Goodwill because she doesn't live close to you and she'll never see it. Or you're a Space Invader. I like that a lot. But you really kind of move things. Things come in and things go out. And when I think about people with too much stuff, I think of the concept of a dam. You have a dam in your home where things come in, but they're stuck in the dam. So, okay, so she just says really messy. So that's another way of looking at it. The second thing I talk about is feelings. What you find with people who have a lot of stuff can sometimes be, someone talked to me once about, I pick up something and I vibrate. I'm so it's so tense, the idea of getting rid of something. So sometimes talking with people about, let's relax. Let's figure out how we can hold this item and relax and figure out, do we really need it? But taking the time to take care of our bodies, because I think that one of the things that absolutely doesn't work is when we do forced clean out, and it doesn't really work out if someone comes in and touches our stuff. What works better is if people come in and sort of slowly help us. Yeah, and Jordan talks about the idea of being not sure you might use that thing someday, so the feelings are coming up. And the third way I look at it, yep, sentimental attachment, everyday objects. And some book talks about only keep the things that bring you joy. Well, some people with a lot of stuff, it all brings them joy. So that's why we can't totally just tell people just to do that. The third thing I really look at is what I would call a table. Is your tables cleaned off? Is your bed cleaned off? Do you have pathways? What is the space? Someone talked about space invading, and the reverse of that is creating space. I think maybe Beth said that, but really, creating space, addressing the physical, mental, and emotional clutter. Yeah, so really looking at that, looking at moving in and out, looking at the feelings and how can we support that. A lot of people, I know I met Matt Paxton on a Zoom, and he talked about the idea of, getting someone into therapy or some kind of help. It doesn't have to be therapy, but some kind of help where they can get the feelings down. All right, next slide. Oh, I really want to address Susan's comment because I really like it. And there's probably other great comments I can't totally keep up. But yeah, I like the idea of owning my stuff instead of it owning me. I love that. Yep, Jordan mentioned this, and I think I already picked up on this idea of the anxiety, not sure, sentimental attachment. I can't believe I spent all this money on this and I never use it. Yeah, we definitely hear that. Okay. If someone has hoarding and cluttering behavior, what helps them? What do people think helps?
The
Kindness.
only thing that ever helped me was moving. I've moved so many times in my life.
Okay, so moving. Yeah, absolutely.
Forced. That's, if I hadn't moved, it would be a different story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love some of the words people are saying: kindness, empathy, compassion, non-judgmental support. It really buried and treasure workshops, validation, and patience. Oh my God. Body doubling support. I want to just talk about body doubling because people may not understand Danny's word. Body doubling means sometimes you'll okay, so I'll give an example of myself. I was talking to a woman on the phone and we said we're going to do our goals. So we said, okay, it's 2:00. 2:30 we're gonna get back together. What are we gonna do for half an hour? And she was an actress and she would want to learn her lines. And I said, I gotta clean the trunk of my car. So for half an hour I'm gonna do that. And I went to clean up my car and I gotta be honest, 10 minutes in, I'm like, I hate this. I want to stop. And then I'm like, it's 20 minutes. I can do it. I know she's working on something and I feel, I know she's working on something and then I'm working on something. And a lot of times body doubling is a great process. All right. Next slide. Oh, I'll go back one. Okay. I want people to think, because some people might say, oh, I'd like to be a little tough with the clutterers. We have people who think that way. So I want people to sort of take that time to think of a challenge. It could be having a job hunt after being bullied in the workplace. It could be could be gosh, I'm blanking out. But some kind of challenge that you've had, and think of someone who inspired you to take action. So I'm going to ask everyone to raise their hand when you've thought of a challenge and someone that helped you. So I'm going to ask people. You're not going to have to share. I just want to know who's figured something out. You don't have to share. So Bill's raising his hand. He's got something. Who else can think of a challenge and someone who helps you? Kelsey has got her hand raised. Put that in the mechanical thing so I can see who's got their whatever. If you can do that. Someone's smiling. They think they have an idea there. Who else? Thumbs up works too. Okay. So thinking of a challenge and someone who inspired you, what would you say they did that helped you? I'm gonna call on Beth because I like Beth. Uh, what did they do? How did they inspire you to take action?
They gave me the facts. They validated my feelings. They helped me outline the options. And also, I don't know if they did this, but in doing that, it kind of moved me to a place of what would be a successful outcome. Whether it's, mine was trying to keep my mother alive. But I mean, it could be about trying to, not get evicted, or how do I survive breast cancer? But it was definitely a professional, a social worker in like assisted living or some kind of contact I got that helped me get there.
Excellent. So I love the different things you did. And I think that that's a lot of what can help people when they have too much stuff and they're going to get evicted and really helping them. Yeah. Are other people want to share something that, oh, I'm sorry, were you going to say something else, Beth?
Well, yeah, when they're really in trouble, I think cut and dried works best. Like the, reality check, which thank goodness we have that in Massachusetts.
Yeah. Because I think one thing you can say to people is, I know you want to work slow on this, but the fire department is saying they need a clear path. They need you to have access to a door. And I think sometimes, not in a mean way, but in a kind way, you can say, they couldn't get to you. They couldn't pull you out if they needed, EMTs need to take you out. A door's blocked, it can be dangerous. There was someone recently that was saying, oh, my landlord was complaining about some stuff. And I said, I don't know how much stuff you have. You're not showing pictures, but a landlord could be concerned if you can't, if you have a fire and stuff starts going up, you're in a lot more trouble as a hoarder. Because there was a study that looked at deaths from fires, and it was often people who had a good amount of stuff. And so it was like most people weren't buying your tires, but if you were a hoarder and a fire got going, you could be in trouble. So sometimes if they're in trouble, just being straight up, but still kind. Yeah. Other things that people helped you with, either your stuff or with other things, what tools did they use to help you? Yeah, it's Kelsey.
I know Amy helps me with almost all of my problems, and she does it by infusing positive words, confidence, good vibes, all the things. She infuses like her love through her words and says, but you're great. You've done this. And look, you've done these other things and these are great. And pretty much that response can solve any problem I have ever. She just fills me up with love. And I think some other folks in the room have maybe felt that experience. If you know Amy personally, she does that. And so the positive words and the kindness, kind of seeing myself from her perspective, really helps me in a lot of ways often.
Oh my God. I love that. I know Amy, so I totally agree with that. But yeah, really being kind. That reminds me of something else I see when you're really noticing people's successes. Because if people have a lot of stuff, I mean, I sort of think about, if someone is 500 pounds and they lose 5 pounds, it doesn't show. If someone is 500 pounds and they lose 50 pounds, maybe no one compliments them. Maybe the next person says, oh my God, you're horribly fat, but they've lost 50 pounds. And if you have a huge amount of stuff, it's helpful if people notice the progress. Like, wow, I see that table, has got a few inches more space. That's awesome. So like, don't wait till everything is clean in someone's house. Excellent. So I think that, that's one thing, is to really notice and celebrate people's successes and be willing to do that. That doesn't mean you're saying, okay, you can stop now. It just means you're saying that, and one of the things I talk about is, if you have 500 things on your coffee table and you remove 10 things, it doesn't show, but you still remove 10 things. And the thing is, if we have people who have only 12 things on the table and you move 10 things, you can see it. With 500 things, you move 10 things, you don't see it. But that person worked just as hard. So to really like honor and celebrate. Okay, other ideas people have on what language and words and how can people help you?
I think when people share their own experiences and how they were able to navigate something, kind of that peer lens has always been really helpful to me. It's something I try to use as much as I can in my work.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. Yeah. And some people will say, oh, but someone with the same problem can't help. And I say, actually, there's great research that says people can, because they can see you may have different clutter. So they can they can help and they can inspire you. Yeah. Is anybody else who wants to share before I move on? Okay, next slide. Where did our slides go? Okay. Yeah, next slide. Okay. One of the things we talk about here is trauma and long-term stress, and I want to talk about how that interacts with clutter. One of the ways I look at it is you have like what I would call a system overload. So it's just all too much. It just, so anything you did for coping becomes overwhelmed. So I know some people here who have talked about being bullied in the workplace. So maybe on a Friday night you had a beer, and then maybe on the weekend you might drink with friends. And it's under control and you're fine, but then you start being bullied in the workplace and you're dealing with a constant stress of that. And that one beer doesn't help. So maybe you're drinking too much, or maybe you're just staying in bed overwhelmed, but your systems can get overloaded. So I talk about your coping systems are overloaded and your nervous system can be overloaded. And what worked before to support you, it just doesn't work anymore. I used to talk about, I was a victim of a crime, and I used to say, I was kind of here. And then when after the crime, my nervous system was here. I was always sort of stressed and hyper alert and aware. And, I might overeat. And the cookie that was, the cookie that maybe calmed me down, it calmed me down for like 2 minutes. And then what else do I do later? So, your normal, coping systems, and even like, well, people say, well, I exercised, but then instead they're exercising, well, I want to share what Susan said. It's great, but exercising, but then the exercise becomes obsessive and you get an injury. So healthy or unhealthy things, when they're coping mechanisms, your system just gets overwhelmed. And your ability, trauma can affect your ability to self-regulate. Like I was just giving the example, you just, you just are so stressed. I love it. What someone said is they started shopping, and then shopping became too much and too much of a problem. Maybe they used to shop once a month and it was fine, but then it becomes more frequent, and then you see coping mechanisms sort of not work. And then we talk about, people have talked about, thank you for your comment, Ernie, about people on the spectrum, and they can be easy to empathize. Yeah, workplace bullying can lead to retail therapy, and that compounded your stuff. People can also go into fight and flight. So fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So you're just angry and fighting and interacting and not able to really deal with your stuff. You might. Oh, flight. I'm sorry. I thought I'd repeated the word. Flight is I'm just going to escape. I'm not going to deal with things, and that can end up in your home. You can say, I can't deal with my home. It's too much. You can freeze and just be like, I can't do anything. I'm just stuck. I'm just stuck in general. I'm just kind of stuck there. And then you can fawn, which means you may, like in the workplace, you're trying to placate a boss who's it's just not working. You may be trying to placate an abusive spouse, but it's just not working. And again, all that stuff really distracts from dealing with your clutter. So if someone has a system overload, what do you think's going to help them? Beth, you're smiling, and I totally know you have something to say. So if someone has system overload, what's help?
Since it's Trauma Tuesday, I say it's clutter when you're wearing so many hats. Like, I have it. I'll help you, I'm working, I'm in the workforce. I think motivational interviewing, I think when you can lead the person, like teach a man to fish, works best, because most of the people, by the time they get professional help or paid help or whatever, they've already been shamed, threatened, maybe legal action. And they are one of my favorite sayings is, are you willing to manage it? And yeah, we're willing to manage it. It can be, we have to turn sideways to walk through, but that's okay. They're willing to manage it, but somehow flipping it so somebody could see, you know what, I'd like to be able to move through here quicker or whatever it is, but it's so tricky.
It is tricky. Well, you've said so many great things, as I knew you would. One of the things is finding out what's important to them.
Yeah.
What is deeply important to them. You'll have people say, I want to have my grandkids over. You have people say, I physically see so much stuff, I can't handle it. It overwhelms me. And sort of figuring out, really sort of, sometimes you might need to do the firefighter thing. Okay, the firefighter's complaining. What do we need to clean first of what the firefighter wants? But then on the flip side, it really is good to integrate their values and say, what's most important to you? And you might be surprised, and, might be surprised what they want to do. So we have great ideas. I want to share the ideas that are in the chat. Calming down the system. So that could be meditation. That could be dancing. There's a woman I know has a thing where you actually, it's not really dancing, but it's dancing your issue. So you might say, I'm going to push my issue away. You might actually get up, listen to some really intense music and push it away. And you'd be surprised how that kind of resets your body, and your issue is kind of, you're pushing it away and you're taking action in your dancing. So that's kind of something you can try it with people. You can say, we're going to start our session dancing to a song that you love. Second thing is, you can break down cleaning into smaller and more manageable steps. One of the things that people have talked about, I think it's in the Buried and Treasure book, is you take a paper towel roll and you look through the roll and you say, okay, I'm going to clean that spot. Because if you look through a toilet paper roll, you see way too much stuff. But if you look through a paper towel roll, it really focuses it down. It makes it much smaller. So because I never would say to someone, wow, you need to clean your bedroom. I'd say, what spot in your bedroom do you want to clean? Let's start there, because a room can be too big, but a table or a spot on a table can be more manageable. Someone talks about co-regulating. So if you have people come in and become, some people will talk about co-regulating with their dog. I'm going to have my dog with me, and I'm going to pet my dog as I'm looking at my stuff, and make sure the people coming in my home are calm. Someone says sensory strategies help for them, like deep pressure or earplugs. So just really kind of bring things down. Jordan, oh my God, I love this. Recognizing the way shame is showing up and acting as a barrier to progress. So you want to you want to really look at, like, I think shame can be a real issue, and somatic work can help. So looking at different ways. Great. Oh my God, you guys have great ideas. I have all these things I'm going to share, and I'm thinking you're getting so many of them. So another way trauma can affect you is it can be like really a direct response. So I met someone who kept cleaning by her front door, and then she would, and then she get it clean, and then wait a second, it's all the stuff's back again. And wait, we're cleaning the front door again, and we're cleaning the front door. Well, it turned out she had let someone in her home and they'd committed a crime against her. So what is she doing? She's blocking access. She's saying something's felt unsafe. People have felt unsafe. I want to block access to my space. So sometimes you can really sort of see it, and it can be really heartbreaking, because that's when you want to make sure you're helping people. Now, sometimes people need insight. Where does my hoarding behavior come from? Is there a trauma? Other people don't need the insight, but understand that it really, it can be really like direct. Okay, so trauma can cause a lack of control. I know some people that have been victims of domestic violence, and they were so under another person's control that then when they get out, they're buying too much stuff, because it's like, wait, I finally have control, but the control isn't. It's almost like over control. That they go from a person controlling them then to the stuff controlling them. But you can see that. People can feel a loss of purpose and identity. Deb, I know, does some great work with people who've been bullied. And one of the things is, if you've been a firefighter or a teacher or a therapist or whatever, and then you don't have that anymore, either people are telling you you're horrible at your job, or being at that job is horrible, or you have to leave that job. You can feel this loss of identity, just a huge loss of identity, and it can be heartbreaking, because that may have been, there's certain jobs that are sort of can become part of who you are, and then you lose that. So we want to help people say, okay, is there another way? Is there something you got in that job that you can replicate in a way that's safer? How can we get you back slowly by volunteering in a way? You were helping people. Can you volunteer in a way that's helping people? Let's honor the fact that you've been through this huge stress, but also like slowly getting you back, getting some identity, and also saying, wait, is there a new identity you want to take on? Wait, I was bullied in this. I was a firefighter. I was bullied. I just don't want to go back to that. What do you want to do? Like, for helping people, support people in new identities. Safety. If people have felt unsafe, someone, I think Matt Paxton talked about, a lot of hoarders have been victims of sex abuse. So people aren't safe. So really helping people helping people get back that safety, helping people figure out how to make sure that new people are safe, doing some, saying, okay, one of my big things is if you've been in an abusive relationship or abusive workplace, it can be easy to not even spot that something's abusive again, because you're sort of, it's hard. Or you either can think everything is unsafe, or you can really have trouble. Well, they're not as bad as that was. So to really help people distinguish what's safe and what's not safe, and just really honor the fact they do feel unsafe, and just honoring that. All right, next thing is memory. People want to remember things, and one thing that can help people is saying, okay, you have all of Uncle Frank's stuff. What really reminds you of Uncle Frank? So I've seen people do beautiful things where they have someone we all know. I don't want to name him because he didn't ask for that, but really like saying what 10 things of Uncle Frank's, maybe it was someone that meant the world to you, really was part of raising you, setting up something like an area where you have his books and his pictures and just an area. You can't do that with every relative because if you have a big family, or you may not be, but really honoring someone who's been there. Anything else that okay, I want to answer a question here. Okay. Yeah, so Dr. Tolan would say, and he's a respected person in the field, there is a fire if you have to choose 3 things that are most important to you and get out of the house. And so often they froze and could not decide. You have to see people as the experts of their own lives, absolutely, and follow the lead, what's most important to them. Trust really needs to be built, absolutely, oh my God. And this is something like many things they will have to manage the rest of their life. I'm definitely a recovering hoarder and have relapses often. It's a process. So I love the idea of people relapse and people make through it. And I always like, it's a process and that's okay. But I like the idea that you're really looking at getting into them and saying what really is your most important stuff. And you might be surprised what people say. Some people, we had a BIT class where people showed what was really important to them. And I'm like, wait, what? What? That's the most important thing? But that's okay because that's their thing. That's their thing that reminds them of their mom. And it might be like a ratty stuffed animal. And that's okay because that's their thing. We can honor people. We don't have to agree always. We might want to say, okay, you have more stuff than you can really manage, but what of this is really important to you? And when someone freezes, when you ask a question, you say, okay, let's take a few deep breaths. That's a hard question. Let's take a few deep breaths and let's try it again, or let's just pick one thing when we start. What's important to you? I want to learn about you. And I really like the idea when you're working with someone with too much stuff of being like Michelangelo. You got this really big piece of marble and you're taking away what's not important. And you're actually creating this beautiful sculpture. So really looking at it as that, like they have some treasures in there. They may be, not working for them. Okay. So clutter itself can be traumatizing. Um, I love one person talked about retail therapy and then it became too much. People can be overwhelmed and then feel bad. So they can how did I let it get this way? I can't even start. It's so much stuff. So they get traumatized by their clutter. Their clutter itself becomes a problem. So maybe your coping mechanism was buying stuff and you're too stressed. So then you can't, and then you can't, work because you're almost frozen, and then we want to get you out of that. So be aware that clutter itself can be traumatizing. The second thing, and I know Jordan brought this up, but this is something huge, is shame. So one of the reasons I like people working in groups, either in BIT or in some kind of groups, is people have so much shame, and shame can freeze you. I've never heard someone say, I felt shame and I really took action. What I've heard people say is, I think I can do a little piece of this, and I took action. I'm realizing other people in this situation, and I can take action. But I've never heard someone say, I feel really, really bad, and then really be successful in a goal. So trying to reduce shame and other people's reactions. We hear a lot in cluttering groups about the idea that, your sister will come over and shame you. And that doesn't work. But you have relationships where they may be anger, there may be, and that in itself, understand that people may be dealing with relatives that talk to them that way. And then how can we help when the clutter itself is traumatizing? Do people have ideas besides what I've said? Do people have anything they want to add? I think for me, what I see a lot is to really connect with other people. I think reading the book Barden Treasures, if you're not ready for a group yet, but reading that. Um, I really sort of stick with the Barden Treasures second edition because I think some of the books out there say some things that just aren't going to be a good fit. But Barden Treasure talks about the bad guys, um, the ideas you have that don't really work for you. It talks about the good guys and what support you can get. And I encourage people, if you're not ready for a group, to sort of start there. That can be something to sort of say, wait, there's a whole book about people like me. That can move people forward. I also encourage professionals. We're going to talk more about professionals, but one of the things is encourage a professional that you're working with to read the book so they have a better sense of what's going on. So next slide. All right, I'm gonna put you guys on the spot. I'll see if you guys are interested in sharing. If we assume all behavior makes sense, how can we think of clutter? Oh, go back. Okay.
Sorry, Kathy, I wanted to unmute and it made me go to the next slide.
Okay.
I love that you really are talking about it as a coping mechanism. That to me is really helpful, just to think about it as, I believe trauma is like the root cause of every source of distress. And that, addictions, all kinds of these things are just ways we've learned to cope with our trauma. So seeing it that way, I have been finding very helpful. I also, it resonated for me to think about the feelings, and, messy stuff and messy feelings and, boundaries, I think, is another thing that's just coming up for me. Is I know that that's something that I struggle with in general, and I feel like cluttering, it can be really about the boundaries, and kind of pushing them out or keeping them in. And I know, when I engaged in this behavior, most I was a kid, and so I had adult control around how much it could get and when I needed to clean it up. And when I did need to clean it up, I fortunately had very kind friends who would come over and help me, because I couldn't play until it was dealt with. And so having people that I didn't feel judged by, that were willing to come and help me, was super helpful.
Yeah, I like so much of what you said. I loved what you talked about, messy feelings, messy stuff. So sometimes sorting out the feelings. Um, and I wanted to, someone asked for the chat, the title of the book I'm mentioning to be in the chat. Someone has provided a link. I'm going to show it to you. This is what it looks like. This is a book I really think is like a Bible, because I feel like it's really helpful when, it just is really good book. Make sure it has this cover, because this is a newer edition and this is the better edition. So this is the book that I really like, Barden Treasure, and it is by second edition, and it's by Tolan Frost, and God, maybe someone else can say the last name. I don't totally know how to say that, but get a key. I don't know. So yeah, so that's like I saw something in. Yep. So thank you, Jillian, for doing that, putting the book in there. And someone says, for my mother, it was growing dementia on top of grief. It was a place marker for what she had lost or was losing. So grief. Thank you so much. For bringing up grief and dementia. Absolutely. You definitely see, we had someone in one of our classes whose son had died, and she was really frozen, and, just really, and with someone like that, I'm going to go a little more gentle. I'm going to say, maybe we can work around the edges. Maybe we don't need to start with your son's stuff. We can start with some other stuff. Maybe you can pick out what we really like. Yeah, and then so let me share something else. We often say the drugs are another problem, they were the solution. I wonder if some can be said for the same, the case of hoarding. Yeah, I love you use the word soothing for hoarding. I think it can be soothing. I loved it. They used to say marijuana is the gateway drug to harder drugs, and what we hear people therapists saying now is trauma is the gateway drugs to addiction. So trauma can be a gateway into this. I mean, I certainly know, up to my early 20s, I didn't have great control of getting rid of stuff, but I was doing okay. Then I had a really dramatic crime committed against me. And, you know, I just, my not so great, my not so great coping skills didn't really, my ability to sort and get rid of things wasn't strong, but it was completely lost when I had a trauma. So you can find that with grief too. So that's one of the ways it can make sense. What time is it? Oh, good. Okay, now I know what time it is. Thank you. So I think it is different. Jordan says, I think it is different for different people. We lump people together. That's a DSM-3. Absolutely. It can make difference. This behavior can make difference for a lot of reasons. Thank you for saying that. Trauma, OCD, scarcity mindset. I want to talk about that for scarcity mindset. And then I'll go back to some other things he says, but I want to just sort of pause on that one. Someone talked about people being in the depression. That can, be like, oh, I don't have enough. You sometimes have people that were dealing with poverty, and then they're sort of dealing, they finally have money, and they just keep getting stuff because they're so anxious. Do I really have stuff? A sort of dramatic example of sort of scarcity mindset is I worked in a group home, actually, where youth were incarcerated, and the staff was saying there is a horrible smell in this place and we don't know what it is. The staff investigated, and there was sort of a hole in the wall, and a young person was hoarding food. So he had not previously had enough food. So he's like, okay, there may not be food later. Yeah, they're feeding me lunch, but will I have dinner? So he was coming from a scarcity mindset. Okay. So, anxiety about having what you need. Yeah, anxiety can be big. And a fear of making the wrong decision. Sentimentality about objects. People can feel, oh, this object will be hurt if I discard it. Chronic pain and fatigue, absolutely, and trauma. But yeah, if you have pain or fatigue, um, there's a concept called spoons. I don't know the official word, but they talk about, some people get 20 spoons a day, and you can use one spoon for taking a shower, one spoon for driving to work, some spoons at work, and you have some spoons left over so you can cook dinner and declutter. Some people we get less spoons because they're going through trauma. One person I know, and her son was killed. This is another person whose son was killed, and she said, I set 2 goals a day after I lost my son: getting out of bed and taking a shower. And some days, the only things I achieved were those 2 goals, getting out of bed and taking a shower. And she said, you know what? Soon after it happened, maybe for the first even 6 months, some days I didn't achieve those 2 goals. I just didn't. So she's got less spoons. So sometimes being honored in the fact that some people just have less, and want to support them, but we want to be realistic. They're not, people have different levels of spoons at different points of their lives. Okay, someone else had to, okay, someone has to jump off. They thanked us. The local, what is BOH?
Boards of health.
Oh, okay, boards of health are seeking resources to manage situations. So the more we can give to help, the better. I love that idea. Boards of health. Yes, absolutely. Okay, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate people being willing. As a therapist, I'm trained. All behavior makes sense. We can look at it and say, wait, this doesn't make sense. There's so much stuff here, but it does make sense. There's some reason for it. Okay, next. Okay, I want to just give you a couple things. People will talk about therapy. They've done some research recently of EMDR. No one calls it eye movement desensitization or reprogramming. It's a way too long a name. Even people who do it don't call that. It's called EMDR. It sounds very weird, but it basically talking about your trauma. You want someone who's trained, and it's not just as simple as this, but a really short, very simplistic explanation is you're talking about your trauma and someone is moving, and what happens is it breaks some of the cycle of the trauma. They've done it with veterans, and they've shown it, they've done it with first responders who see a lot of stuff, and it can really help, because what can happen is there can be such a groove in your mind, and it sort of changes that a little bit. And I've had it personally, and I found it very helpful. So I really encourage you. That can be a way of really dealing with that. There's also compassion focused therapy. So really having empathy and kindness, and that has shown to be helpful. Both things, there's promise. They haven't done a lot of research, but it's that both things are showing promise. So, it's definitely things to consider. And I want to also be clear, because some people say, but I don't want to be compassionate. They got so much stuff. And what I want to say to that is what you may do is what I call compassion with boundaries. So you may do what Beth said is, you're in trouble with the fire department. We need to get you some services. So compassion with boundaries is you still talk to people about what they may need to do. You don't, and you might say, oh God, it's hard to get rid of your stuff. But your husband is saying he wants a place to sit without any stuff on it. Can we do that? So I'm a big believer in compassion, but with some gentle, very kind boundaries. Next slide. What we know helps. This is what we know helps. Cognitive behavioral therapy. So really having someone, saying, what is your thought process here? Is that thought process working? So sort of going through things, and your therapist trained in that. And what I'll always say is, if you have a therapist that's trained in that, but they don't know about hoarding, you can ask them, I've heard about this book. Can you read this book and learn some more? So can be hard to find a therapist who also specializes in hoarding. So you might want to encourage them to read that. I always tell people reading that book, I'm not going to hold that up again. You've already seen it, but reading the hoarding book, start there. And I know Danny mentioned this, but a lot of people I know in this group, including myself, have actually, I have been, like someone said, I'm not just a president, I'm not just a member, I'm the president, or both ways. Yeah, I've been as a participant, and they help, and the Bride and Treasure groups, and they also, I think the biggest thing for me was me saying, oh wait, there's people like me, and to really, say, oh wait a second, and that can dissipate some of the shame. And so I'm big on what can we do to dissipate shame? What can we do to laugh about our stuff, to sort of get some of the intense energy out? All right, next slide. Okay. I'm ahead of schedule. I don't know if this is, anyway. So, what's it like for family members? Who wants to share, and how can we support family members? So, anybody would like to add to that?
I've offered my mom help. I mean, she just turned 86, and I live out in Apache Junction. It's about an hour drive from her place, which I have two siblings over on that side of the valley who really don't do much of anything. But she goes, no, I'll take care of it. All I can do is ask. And I told her too. I says, before you die, I want this shit gone because I don't want to deal with it. Maybe that was cruel, but it was just like, I don't know how else to motivate her just to declutter it, because I'll be left with it because my other siblings will just like disappear like they normally do. So,
Yeah.
but I have other issues with my mom with the NPE too. So probably wasn't the nicest thing, but I'm still pissed about that. But
Well, one thing I'll say to family members is, can you get support? And then sometimes family members are not the best people to get involved. If it's possible to get a third party, it's like you're dealing with the stress, and it can be difficult, and maybe having a third party go in, because what can happen is, sometimes there's a sort of a long-term sort of conflict between people, and you need a third party to come in and help out. So validating how a family member can feel. Someone talked about the idea of uh, someone talked about the idea of being the child of a hoarder, and what can happen then is there's less space for you, and you're as a child of a hoarder or someone with a lot of stuff, you're really like trying to figure out what's my identity. There's so much stuff, there's not a space for me. Because one thing that can happen is, like, I remember one of the things I loved in my life was picking out my bedding, and picking out things I loved. And the more stuff your family has, the less you can get a little lost in that. So that can be an issue. Danny, thank you for sharing that. It's really stressful for my husband, and he feels like he has no support, and his friends don't get it. So I think to talk to people, to give support to family, to give support to spouses, to give support to children, to validate, to make sure that person knows you can say, wait, I really need this particular area cleaned, and support them to, sort of speak up for what's very important to them. I don't tell them, go in and tell them your spouse to clean everything, but the spouse, I might say, can you say this area is really important to me? So kind of making it so you want to balance, because you don't want to overwhelm the hoarder or the person with too much stuff, but you also want to make sure the other person doesn't get lost, and people can get lost in other people's clutter. Yeah, and Susan said, my family member wasn't able to take action until a board of health threatened her with the loss of her home. And that can happen. And sometimes, you need a third party. A third party will come in and say it's too much. So I think validating, I think we need to validate. And somebody said recently, I've heard children of people with too much stuff, they need to call it hoarding. Please don't put it up because of what I lived through. And to honor what they're feeling, just to really honor that, to be really, they can get lost. I mean, Amy talked about, messy feelings, messy space. They're dealing with this stuff and it's not theirs, and they can feel a loss of control. And you might say, what can you do to get out of the home at times? What can you do to say, the clutters, we're dealing with I understand you're dealing with a clutter. I understand it took you 10 years to get here, but I really need I need the sofa, and kind of helping with that negotiation with kindness on both sides. All right. Anything else people want to share before I move on from that slide?
I wanted to share, I might have missed it, Kathy, because I was typing away at Susan.
Okay.
I'm right at the top of the chat, like, why
Okay.
does it seem like there's more people now?
Yeah.
The thing about family helping, it's good to feel like you have family support, but usually there's a lot of history and background, and they can have, the person can be traumatized just knowing their family's going to be nearby or something. I think it's better when we kind of get professional help, or, you know what I mean? More neutral people. You want the support, but having somebody in there saying, you don't need this, you don't need that. Well, you know what I mean? Or they feel judged or whatever. Even just your body motions, like, you know what I mean? If they seem impatient and they're
like,
it can
okay.
be really, yeah.
Absolutely.
And they mean well too sometimes, but I think real help for the other person too. I am living with hoarding disorder. My husband finally drew the line, like, I don't want to live in a storage unit. I'm done. And you know what? He held me to that, and we're still together today and happy, but it took a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there can be a loss of rapport with
Oh,
people.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So how can we want to make sure we're supporting them and we're validating. We want to be really compassionate to the person with too much stuff, but we also want to hold in our heart and hold and validate. And this is hard for you too. This is hard for you too. And we may need to offer support. Some professionals might be like, oh gosh, I'm dealing with this. I'm overwhelmed as a professional. We're actually going to get to professionals in the next slide, unless anyone wants to share more about how we can support family first.
I have one more thought about supporting family.
Absolutely, I'd love to hear it.
There's kind of, two camps in the family. One of my family members is maybe struggling, maybe not. I don't know. She doesn't say it, but another family member saying she really needs to clean her stuff. She really needs to clean her stuff. She really needs to clean. And I, as kind of someone in the middle, keep saying, but maybe she doesn't. Right? And is there space for us to just let her be her until just let her be until she's ready? And if at some point she reaches out and says, hey, I'd like to clean my stuff, or I'm worried about my stuff, or I think there's too much, can we offer support or ideas, or and be willing and open then? But do we have to impose that onto somebody else? And what's the kind of the role of family in some of that? And I trust that it's coming from a place of love. The person saying she really needs to clean, she really needs to clean, and I'm I'm here in the middle being like, she's gonna do it when she's ready, and it's not our job to tell her what she needs to do, because maybe she just needs to live, right? And if she could enjoy her life more, then maybe she wants to clean her space more, or however, right? Like what comes first. And sometimes I'm seeing in my own family there's an obligation to clean, like it's a responsibility we all have to each other to keep spaces clean. And I don't know that that's the best way, or how to keep managing that. Yeah.
I like that. And I think the difference can be partly, do you live with the person or not? So if you're not living with the person, because if you're living with the person, I think what Beth was speaking was living with her husband. What Danny talked about was living with
Yeah.
living with his husband. So that can change things. But if you're not living with them, yeah, Beth.
Well, I love Kelsey. Thank you so much for bringing that up. We do have a model to follow. We call it harm reduction, and that's a real thing. And to keep people, obviously, if the fire department says, all right, the fire load is too much, or there has to be a 3-foot pathway, I stick with that. I think every time I meet someone, and even for my own, wellness, am I hitting all those points? And there's a form available. Oh my God, how could I forget the name of it?
Uniform
inspection checklist. Yeah. It's
Excellent.
very neutral, and it's about are your egress is clear, yada, yada. And that's a good place to start. But you're right, the average person doesn't realize it's okay if somebody wants to sleep in a recliner in their living room. They can do, just because you think they should be doing this or that doesn't make it, real or necessary. But there are, legal issues, the safety of other people, especially if they're in housing, So I just call it harm reduction.
Yeah.
But I think it's a public health issue that they should be educating. Why doesn't every nurse and shrink know about this? Is beyond me.
Yeah, I want to second that, because I got my bachelor's degree in psychology and my master's degree in social work, and I only heard one guy talking about someone that might have had hoarding, and that's it. One example in one class. That's a lot of education I went through, and I didn't hear about that. I loved his example where he was saying he went into someone's home when they were depressed, and he said, "What's depressing you?" He goes, "All my dishes are depressing me. It's too much. I can't handle it." And he goes, "Okay, you wash and I'll dry. And while we're doing that, we'll talk and we'll have therapy." So, he goes, "We talked about some great stuff," and she left, and the dishes were clean. But I think that we sometimes get into, with other people's stuff, a moral issue. You can hear people talk about they're bad or they're whatever, or they're lazy. People will encourage minimalism. I tend to think it's okay. I want to be clear when I talk to people who have too much stuff, more stuff than they want. That you don't have to be a minimalist. That's not what we're shooting for. Unless that's what you want, we're not shooting for that. What we are shooting for, there was a couple I know that moved from a multi-bedroom house, maybe 3-bedroom house, to a much smaller 2-bedroom assisted living kind of place, but it was much smaller. They lost a lot of space. And I walk in and I go, wow, they have the Oriental rugs. You know, she likes to cook. She used to have 20 cookbooks. Now she has
And you
4.
don't, I'm listening to something. I don't want to
Okay.
hear you crying.
Okay. That was somebody else. And they also had a 4.5-foot bear, a carved bear that you can put coats on. And I loved it that they said, what's really important to us. That wasn't a minimalist move. They had what they really loved, but no more. So I think that partly really helping people understand. But Kelsey, I think you're right. I think letting people be times, but with the caveat, compassion with boundaries, with Beth saying, we need 3 feet, we need the doors clean, stuff like that. All right. So, on her deathbed, my mom was distressed. Others have to deal with herself. I had her tell me the meeting item was most important to her, and we talked and shared memories. It was good for both of us. And Susan talks about, Judy shared that, and Susan said they're doing that with someone right now. I just love that. I just love that. Because, sometimes people need to tell the stories before they can move something along. They need to they need to talk about their life. This is their scrapbook. Their home is their scrapbook. How can we, and we need to think of it that way. They might be willing to get rid of something, but we need to sort of gently let them tell the stories. But we need to honor safety, and we need to honor that we may not be the one that wants to hear the story. We might say, let's pull someone else in who can listen compassionately. How anybody else want to say, how can, or do we, yeah, anyone else want to share how we can support family members? Before we move on, anyone want to share how can we support family? Okay, so we'll move on. People can listen to the replay if they want to hear that part. How can we support professionals? So we got landlords, we've got firefighters, we got social workers. How can we support those people? And I don't mean, I just mean, how can we support them in what they need to do? Bill raised his hand. Bill.
So I was wondering if I'd get an opportunity to use this as an example. The program that's written right behind me, Love is the Answer. Actually, it's written behind me now. Love is the Answer. It gets people, police and communities of color together because they often have friction. And they do it by multiple events where people have to be in the same room together, work, drinking, eating, painting murals, building gardens, and eventually get to see each other as human. And I can see the same thing with this, is that if you have people who would be willing as clutter masters to be in a room with professionals to be able to say, well, this is why I do what I do, and or this is how this happens, and eventually everyone gets educated as to what's going on from both sides, and then it's usually they're much better off the next time they have to approach someone with that regard.
Oh, Bill, keep talking. That was so valuable. That really was, to really build understanding on both sides. Because I think sometimes, when people go through firefighter training, I'm not sure that they get anything on how to talk with people or any kind of knowledge about why people have stuff. So the clutter doesn't make sense to them. It just doesn't make sense. We had that part when I asked if we assume clutter makes sense, what do we know? I want to just have that little snippet go to all firefighters, like that sort of people saying, how does this make sense for me? But I like that. I love getting people of color. I've worked a lot with people of color, and I've worked a lot when they're over policed and all that. So I can see the value of that kind of thing. And I can see, yeah, you putting it back into people with clutter. Yeah. How else can we support? Bill can share again, or others can share. How else can we support professionals?
Kathy, I definitely tried to help people as a social worker with this, and I learned sort of the hard way that this really is a mental illness. I approached it with logic, and that was not the thing, right? I was trying to but but look, you're not going to need this again because this is this and this is a, and I tried to do the whole honoring the person, like really get to the bottom of why does this person think they want this and what is, and that just was exhausting and frustrating and ineffective. So I learned that one. I don't, you know, I've struggled to wonder about, do you need to like do this without the person, you know, sort of do you do it, doing it without the person feels like it will harm them so much. Doing it together feels near impossible. So yeah, I look forward to hearing what does work, because I learned a lot about what didn't work, and I don't feel like I was effective in helping somebody with this, and that makes
Yeah.
me feel bad.
So I would say, you know, what I've seen working is like validating someone going in. And I, you know, if we were together, I'd say, Amy, that's hard. That's hard. You don't really have an understanding of this problem yet. Um, you know, it's hard to go into someone's home and you may feel this sort of urge. I'm like, I just want to take boxes and boxes of stuff out of here. So just acknowledging that people may feel that way. I've heard organizers talk, and some organizers have great empathy. Some people are organizers are angry. Um, they just need to do this. And I think just listening to professionals doesn't mean that if you have the issue, doesn't mean you need to be the one that listens, but making sure they are heard, that professionals are able to talk about their frustrations. Um, you know, they're able to talk about their frustrations. Um, you know, just validate that. I think we can support professionals by educating them. Um, you know, and also, yeah, I like it. I saw Beth's face as you mentioned the idea of cleaning without people. You know, I know she's going to share more on this, but in general, you know, one of the best things to rule is don't touch their stuff. Talk through their values. You know, what's important to you. Really focusing on, um, you know, Bill mentioned his file cabinet. I might go and say, "You mentioned your file cabinet, Bill. This was like a while ago. You mentioned it." I might say, "Is that the most important thing to you?" You know, where I might say to, you know, whomever, where do you want to start? What works for you? What's your goal here? And you know, I think that is, um, people can think that, you know, someone who has a lot of stuff doesn't have a goal. But often when you say, "Is this working for you?" They'll often say no, and they'll say, "Well, what's most important to you?" And they'll come up with an answer, and then you go from there. You go from there. You go from, you want to have your grandkids over. Okay, what do we have to do to get your grandkids over? What steps do we need to take? I know Beth talked about the idea of building a plan and doing that, and sometimes really keeping them in the focus. It's so tempting to grab stuff. It doesn't work. I'm going to read what Jordan said first. I once spoke with a parent of adult child who planned to lure their patient away and then clean the house while it was gone. It was such a violation. It had no long-term benefit on the clutter itself. Jordan, thank you for sharing that. That brings me to another point. A lot of people will really encourage forced cleanouts. What we find, forced cleanout is basically someone comes in, they take a lot of stuff. I'll tell you what research has shown again and again. If they were an 8 out of 10 with clutter, you do a force clean out, they build up back to a 10 out of 10. So long term, it's not effective. Once in a while, you have situations where a very small number of people it has helped, but in general, it's a very bad plan. The more they are in control, you know, when we talked about what helps, and I think, you know, some people were giving ideas, patience, and different things. What helps is centering the person. You know, how can we center the person? How can we center someone, you know, who's been bullied? How do you want to heal? When you have trauma, and definitely some hoarders have that, you need to have some control back. You know, how can we say, what's the most important thing for you? Bring that control back, because what we don't want to do is, you've been bullied horribly, you've gotten too much stuff. Yeah, we're going to handle it. The thing they need is, where do you want to start? And obviously, what I would say always is, you know, I say compassion with boundaries. Where do you want to start? But first, we're gonna make the doors available. Then we're gonna help with the next step. Is, what do you really want? So we may need to do safety first. Beth, you've been awesomely patient. What would you like to share?
I don't know whether to jump for joy or cry. What was you know what? I was listening so intently. Oh, I was going to say education. We're trying, everybody's knows it's important. I took that community health worker thing out of Boston, and not only did they not even touch on it, but someone actually made derogatory comments like, oh, you don't want to work with a hoarder, you know, like that. And somebody who worked at BU, I was like, hello. And I looked at the training for this year, and they do a lot of good training, but like no one's educating the public. We have these people called peer support specialists, community workers, and it's great. They throw a little money at it. I've been working as one for a few years, and I still don't have the certificate because the state doesn't invest money in education. So if you're a maintenance man at a big place, you know, in Worcester or Boston, they need to know, not that it's their responsibility, but everybody at every level should kind of know, like, we know how to treat the elderly. Well, but you know what I'm saying? There's certain things that everybody needs to know. And it really does take a group effort, I think, because you could be doing, I've had this happen. You're trying to help somebody, but the building manager is traumatizing them and scaring them and berating them and barging in. And like, if people don't know their rights and all, like, how can we really help the person? But people need to know, I can't fault the building manager. They're just trying to, like, you know, be within the code because the fire department's mad because they keep coming out and yeah, stuff like that. The other thing too, I noticed in the people that need to downsize, Susan had asked way up at the top there about why are there so many now? And the pandemic, of course, traumatized people, right? But the baby boomers, I'm the last supposedly of the baby boomers, and I just turned 61. I've met so many people, well, they don't want to be called a hoarder, but they need to downsize. And that in and of itself, it's a whole subset of people that can be addressed in a workshop, but I don't know that anybody's written a book about it. Kind of like you would take the caregiving course through, you know, your senior services or whatever. I mean, people really need help with that because and you're older, you have health problems and all this, your spouse is gone, you have all these heavy wool coats. It's like a physical thing, it's logistics, it's money, it's your family saying, oh, you got to move now. And people downsizing in a smaller place. I saw my mother kind of get triggered and start shopping like a crazy person when she went to assisted living. It can be like a trigger. And I've seen that like with people with homelessness can get like that. Women in halfway houses from addiction, they're like you said about the food in the wall. It's like the scarcity thing. And we have a huge problem with food hoarding, especially again with the pandemic. Because if somebody feels like they need to be taken care of and this pantry's giving away free stuff, you're gonna just keep going and getting it. Some people. So there's all different things come into play. It's quite the phenomenon, really. It's like I said, I don't know whether to cry or I'm glad we're talking about it, but I know it's a lot, isn't it? Yeah.
It is a lot. I really loved your concept of, educating people. I think we really have to do that. I think we sometimes expect firefighters and other people to know what to say and how to say it. Like, I feel like Amy was sent in without some knowledge on how to do that. We need to be empathetic, but also tell them what works. I really want to acknowledge a comment in the chat. I think I haven't acknowledged all the comments. But someone talked about trying to lure a person away and then clean the house while it was gone. It was a violation and no long-term benefit on the clutter itself. So I think I really see that, people are tempted to do that. And someone, Ernie, I love that's a great way of putting it. Forced decluttering is no more effective than pouring an alcoholic supply down the drain. They will find more and trust you less. So absolutely. I think that's such a really great example. It's not like, oh, we get rid of all we get rid of all the alcohol. We know people are going to get it again. And the same with clutter. So it's sort of like that's a bypass thing. That sort of bypasses what we may need to talk with them, help them out, get their goals. But it's so tempting. I know it's tempting for a lot of people, and then I would just tell you it doesn't really work. Um, Someone is saying, Susan saying to Beth, it should be added to the CHW and the peer support training. Yeah, to really, we need to have more education around this. That drives me a little crazy. Oh, anyone who's a professional home visitor should have these skills. Yeah, and I think the best thing is like almost like, and I wish I had more pictures. But to really have people look at pictures and sort of know ahead of time. I know I met someone who was training to be in EMT, and one of the books had a lot of gory pictures. And I thought, wow, this is a little bit much. And then I realized he's going to have to go to a scene and he's going to see this. He needs to know, like, kind of have a sense of it ahead of time. Get a little used to it. It's horrible. It's not good to look at. First responders see gross things. And they have to, but how can we sort of prep people? So people go in the home, because people going in the home going, oh my God. You want to have that reaction while you're looking at pictures, not right when you're with the person. So we want to train people. So, yeah, Susan's talking about we need knowledge and home care need. Oh yeah, being able to say people need heavy chore. I want to address what heavy chore is, and home care workers need that. Heavy chore is something that different programs offer. Heavy chore will really like, they might take away your garbage. They might say, okay, we got to look at your refrigerator. What's rotten in here? Let's get rid of that. They'll haul stuff away. They might haul furniture away. It's with your permission, hopefully. But you know, some people, for example, I've had people, I'm in part of different groups that are people dealing with this. And some people say, I live in a rural community. I can't, how do I get rid of the stuff? So you have people that come in because people may be elderly, people may be disabled, or people might just be too overwhelmed. So something like heavy chore can go in there and help. I also think this is sort of a little off topic. How do we help professionals? One way is to help the people. I'll talk to people about the idea, pick 5 places you give away to. That have some meaning for you, that are easy for you to donate to, that are close and that have meaning. So for example, I started realizing the shelters want blankets and towels. All of a sudden I look at a towel that, maybe I'll use it in 5 years. I don't want to get rid of it. Oh wait, a cat could be cuddled in this. All of a sudden I'm like, cool, I get rid of the towel. So you know what I mean? Like when, when people will say, well, if I lost 20 pounds, I could get in the stress, then they'll say to themselves, wait, they're women, who are homeless who need a job interview. All of a sudden, the attachment to the dress can seem less. So I think telling professionals, help the people develop a list, help them develop what causes do you care about, how can we help you donate to those places. And once, now once in a while you have someone who says, I don't want to give any of my stuff away. Well, that's a different thing that won't work for them. But some people have causes they care about deeply. And you can say, your kids are in their 20s, you still have their toys from when they're 5 or 6. There's kids out there that don't have toys that could really enjoy playing, and people can feel more motivated when they don't know it's not just, going in the dumpster. So helping people find, have a list of things. All right, what else? Yeah, Ernie, thank you. As a pastor, I was unprepared for my visits that would include amazing array of clutter that could be hazardous. Preparation can help the people, I'm sorry, preparation can help see the person behind the clutter and know who and how we can be empower healing. Yeah, absolutely. So I wish people had been more to helping you. And then I appreciate you wanting to see the person behind the clutter. Yeah. Laura talks about, my examples and finding purpose for your items. Beth talks about some towns have social workers and nurse practitioners on staff and a little bit of funding to help deal with the discarding and picking up of donations. So yeah, so local towns, I know community centers, elder centers, some places, some towns have Department of Public Health. I have a feeling there's at least a few fighters that would say to someone elderly or someone infirmed, "Oh, yeah, we'll take some stuff. We'll get rid of it for you," because they'd rather help you then than be in a fire situation. So, getting, helping. So I just think, first of all, starting, and I wish I had more pictures. I apologize. If I'm asked to do this again, I'm going to have more pictures in this, and show people pictures. So thank you very much for all your ideas. Yes, and next slide. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. Wow. We're ending. Okay. Well, I'll tell you about myself, but then I'm going to open it up to any kind of questions or things people want to share, because I know we've got like such a great variety of people, and we've got such wealth of knowledge in this room. So I'm just going to share about me. You can reach me. There is my email. I have digital clutter, so I strongly recommend you put in the subject line trauma or hoarding or BIT, and I'll start doing a search. I'll search my email for trauma, hoarding, or BIT, and then I will see it. Otherwise, I might miss it. If I don't answer your email in 5 days, please resend it. It's nothing personal. Things get lost. Happy to, I don't take that as nagging. I take that as you being realistic about the fact that sometimes I'm going to miss stuff. You are absolutely welcome to ask me questions. Beth, there's actually a good book. You mentioned the elderly. There's actually a good book on helping people downsize specifically for the elderly, and I will give that to people if people email me. I'm open to questions. If you're a professional, I'm open to questions. If you're a relative, I'm open to questions. If you have lived experience to really get, to help you out. I love questions. I mean, I'm a born teacher, and I just love it. So any questions? If you want some services, I'm happy to provide services. I want to be clear. If you ask a question, I'm not going to say, "Oh, do you want service?" I will take a question as a question and help you with that. If you want services, I facilitate a bride and treasure group. I'm about to start one. When I get enough people, I will start one. I'm looking at teaching it. I want to figure out when people want to have it. I was thinking of teaching it from 5 to 7 on Sunday night in Eastern time. That would be the 5 to 7, and that's 2 to 4 if you're on California, if you're on that Pacific time. So 2 to 4 if you're in California, 5 to 7 if you're in Eastern. MJ, we would love to have you. So shoot me an email. So I can facilitate that. It is a cost. I will work with you if the cost is unmanageable, and I can do that. I can counsel people. I'm trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, which is, oh, thank you, Kelsey, for putting that in there. And then people can look at it when we switch slides or we do anything. I can counsel people. I'm actually looking to get trained at EMDR. So if you say, "Oh, I want that," I'll say, "Well, I'm going to work on getting that training." So we can wait to do that. If you want counseling, if you want, I have lived experience with it, so I can have an empathy. And I'm trained also as a therapist. I can help you with decluttering. Right now I really can mostly help over Zoom. So if you don't find that supportive, I can get you other referrals. But I would be doing that over Zoom, and we can do something that is where I hear what objects mean to you, or we can do something more where we sit together and I say, "Okay, 5 minutes work on this. What do you want to work on for 5 minutes?" And we can do stuff like that. So I can help in different ways. And I can also give a presentation. If you say, "Wow, I think people in my professionals in my town need this," or "I think I'm gonna want to get together a group of people," or like someone like Danny, I'm not putting you on the spot, but if Danny says, I want a support group, can you start a support group for relatives?" And I can say, "Oh, let's see if we can build one up." So I can do all of those things if that's what people want. It is my pleasure to help people who have lived experience and those in their lives, either professionally or personally. I think anybody, I want to support, and one of the reasons I want to help family and I want to help professionals is that's actually a great way to help people who have too much stuff. All right. So I think that's the last slide, or was there one more? Okay, you can go back. That was a mistake. I don't know how to get rid of, I didn't know how to get rid of an extra slide. So, Oh, thank you for your kind words. So, let me see what's in the chat. Okay, great. What questions do people have? I really want to throw this out. And what questions do people have?
Kathy, I wasn't sure. Is body doubling like sort of like parallel play? Like, does that mean like I'm going to do this work and you're going to do this work? You kind of explained the term, but I wasn't sure I totally understood.
So body doubling means that someone is there, and there have been people that do that on Zoom. It's actually been shown to be effective. I'll tell you a story which is sort of off fluttering, but there was some man that said, I'm a lawyer and I have ADD. I have a lot of work to do. I need a secretary. And the secretary says, what do I need to do? And he said, sit there. I don't care if you file your nails. I don't care if you're playing on your computer. I just need someone physically there. It literally can be someone sitting in the room or sitting on the computer that you know is there. Like I talked about, my trunk was horribly messy until I had someone that I knew was working on some other task. All of a sudden I'm like, okay, I can do it. It's just the idea, like, and we have people sometimes where different groups run it. I know someone here, I don't want to say who it is, but he runs a great group on Saturday. He can talk about that if he chooses to, but that's a lot of body doubling. But basically it's like someone else is there. They maybe work, and they don't have to be working on the same kind of task. Some people really want a body double where other people are decluttering. I found it didn't always have to be, but it's someone doing something. Someone is also working. Does anyone else want to add to the body doubling concept? Okay. All right. What are the questions that people have? And actually, I realize I have a piece of pink paper with more ideas. So I'm actually going to take this time to see if there's anything I want to share with my long list.
Are we on the email list now for Trauma Tuesday? If we attended?
Good question, Beth.
I think you have to, thanks, Kels, go ahead.
If you want to be on the email list for Trauma Training Tuesdays and the Worcester Rocks work, you can send me over your email and I'll get you signed up for that list.
Great, thank you, Kelsey.
Excellent. So I wanted to share some things I've seen work for people. One is timers. Some people just really, and people will say, but I only work for 10 minutes. Well, it was like, that's 10 minutes more than you did the day before. Thank you, Kelsey. Let's see what else. Start with smaller achievable goals. I see people sometimes like, I'm going to clean out everything. I'll say, can we work for 10 minutes? Or can you, like, one thing I think is helpful for people is what they call gamification. Can you find 3 things to put in their spot and 3 things to give away and 3 things to throw away? So making it a game instead of, any kind of moral issue. Oh, wait a second. I just disappeared you guys for a second. I minimized you. Sorry about that. I was like, where did they go? Make sure people don't feel alone. I talked about the paper towel organizing. I find that to be helpful. I want to also say, people will get stuck in selling. I want to sell all my stuff. For some people, that's great. What I want to say is sometimes that can be very aspirational. I'm going to sell these things, but they don't. So I'll sometimes say, think about, you're not getting money for it, but you're getting the gift of space. Really create a plan for selling or donate. Because what I see is, people will say, I'm going to sell all this stuff, but then they don't actually sell it and it just ends up staying clutter. So really kind of, a lot of people will say, do a little reality test. I know someone here says something about don't let the method of getting rid of stuff get in the way of your getting rid of it. So Danny has a concept about selling can be a trap. I don't usually sell stuff because I don't want to linger in my house. Oh, I love that, Arnie. Thank you. Working around a space clockwise has helped me to functionally accomplish the effort. You feel some progress as well. I like that idea. It's a breaking down. Yeah, MJ, this is recorded so you can catch what you miss. And people were not able to get here or had to leave for whatever reason. I've already talked about this, but make sure people have, make sure people are celebrating when when they have wins. You don't want to wait till they're done to celebrate the process along the way. In the same way, if someone's 500 pounds, you celebrate a 10-pound loss. You can't wait till they lose however much uh the full amount. Same thing as people have a lot of stuff. Oh, I love Susan. Thank you for saying that. This is to home. Being meaning to sell my stuff for a decade. Yep. That's what I see with a lot of people. Yeah. Um, encourage people to relax and have fun. I don't care how bad your stuff is. I still want you to laugh. I still want you to fun. I still want you to say, I work for 10 minutes. I work for an hour. I work for 3 hours. Watch a movie. Enjoy yourself. Take a walk. Do something. I see people punishing themselves when they have a lot of stuff and saying, I don't deserve. And you do deserve. Because one thing that happens is when you start rewarding yourself, guess what? You start wanting to do it again. So I have a relative that I hates to go downstairs and into her cellar and exercise, and what she does is she plays on a show, and she said, I won't watch the show unless I'm exercising. So if you say to yourself, this is a series I love, every time I clean for 15 minutes or an hour, whatever your sort of quotient of being able to do, enjoy yourself at the end of the night. Really enjoy yourself. Let's see. And make sure I want you to have an identity past this. This is one piece of you. It's not all of you. You know, just remember that. Someone asked about the cultural piece. I think being aware that for some people, asking for therapy, asking for help, some cultures, that's very shameful to really, sometimes I'll also talk, I'll say with kids, with adolescents, you may not want to use the language therapy, you might want to use the language coaching, and you might want to do that with certain cultures, it's more comfortable. Also with certain cultures, that's where it helps to be really focused on what's important to them, because then you can get into, and then looking at how does family view things. Family may be more shame, more shame around. There may be some cultures that have a little more what my relative does reflect on me. Other cultures are sort of whatever they're doing doesn't reflect on me. So being sensitive to that, and being sensitive to the fact that if someone's been poor, really it's really hard for them not to think everything's valuable, including, like Beth talked about, is food. So really being sensitive to that. And is there anything else? I think that's it. So oh, and actually there's one other thing I want to talk about, what I call the messy middle. Just know when people are decluttering, it can get worse before it gets better. So sort of understanding that, because we can go in, I wish I had the pictures, but I cleaned part of my cellar and it was looking bad. In the middle of working on it, it looked worse. I had gotten rid of stuff, but all the stuff that had been piled up neatly was no longer piled up neatly. It looked worse. And then slowly I got rid of it. So I think educating people with lived experience and educating people that are professionals, sometimes it gets worse. It's like a horror movie, you know, 10 minutes before the end, it's an apocalyptic, and then at the end it looks better. So just understand that, and never, ever, ever tell anyone to take everything out of their closet. They may not have anywhere to put it. It may be really hard to fit it back. You want to accept the messy middle, but you don't want to, that doesn't mean you want to create a messy middle, if that makes sense. Like, you want to know that it can get worse, but you don't want to be so intense with people that you're saying, oh yeah, take everything out of your closet. Because if you have a lot of what's called clutter density, it can be super hard to fit all that stuff back, even if you get rid of 3/4 of it. You've been piling that up carefully. And I'm going to end with one more thought. If people have taken 10 years to get the clutter up, they can't fix it in 10 minutes, and they can't fix it in 10 weeks. So, like, I remember, when I've taught the Bargain Treasure, it's 16 weeks, it's 2 hours a week, and we work encourage some work in between. People will say, but we can't stop the class. I still got more to do. I said, you didn't develop this in 16 weeks. We're starting you on the path. We're changing your views. We're getting you support. We're making you feel less shame. But it takes a while. So just be sensitive to that. But there is, someone once said, and I don't know if he wants me to use his name, but I will quote him. He used to say, instead of results guaranteed, slow results guaranteed. So you will get the results. It's just not overnight. And I don't want to, oh, Danny, I was hoping you'd say that. So Danny, I sort of implied he should, say it, and thank you so much for picking up on my hint. Danny DeClose hosts a decluttering Zoom on Saturdays for people who live experience. Please take Danny's email. He does a really great job with that. He's very consistent. He's there almost every week. It's great. I attend sometimes, and thank you, Danny. I was really hoping you put that out there. All right. So reach out to me. Does anyone have any? Definitely fill out the evaluation. And definitely fill out the evaluation. Is there any other questions? We have 5 minutes. Is any questions?
Kathy, this was just so helpful. I really feel like some of it is just people don't realize how much this is happening. Like, I think somebody asked in the chat, are things getting worse? I feel like it's just our awareness. I think that this has been, and when I just started talking about it to promote this, so many people that I had no idea said that someone in their family struggled or they struggled. So I just feel like this is something that's still really in the shadows, and just like every other trauma, it needs empathy and kindness and understanding. And I knew you would give the topic the love that it needed, because judgment is an easy supply, and we know that does not help anything. So I just thank you so much. And it does look like there's some more comments and questions, but I didn't want to end without my sincere gratitude for you taking on this topic with love, and offering people additional resources, continued resources. I think that's so helpful. That just clearly are not enough resources to help people.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I sometimes feel like I have this image of people, whether they're in apartments, whether they have huge storage areas. Susan's mentioning storage areas. Or people can be in small homes and in big homes. And I feel like I almost feel like, people are kind of hidden. This is a hidden problem, but it's there. 2 to 6% of the people, estimates show, have this. If you're dealing with this or you have a relative, you're not alone. But people can feel very alone. So one of my things is, I hope at least if people were saying, thank you, I don't feel alone. So that's important. Lori, what did you want to add?
I just want to say it was very educational. My other thought though was too that from what I've seen, in the public, is that when family members do ask for help, say from maybe family, and then because they don't feel comfortable with strangers coming into their house, but they're not getting any support from the family, or the family will say, well, fine, but it's like these days, I don't know. I'm almost 63, and it's like when you say, "Hey, I'm in movie parties, I'll have sodas and food." I mean, you had the van loaded up, and now you gotta hire people to come do it for you because nobody wants to get involved, I guess we'll say, or they'll say it and that's all it is. And I think then the person is left like, well, I've asked and I'm tired of asking, and they just crawl back in to, their thoughts or whatever. So I've seen that too.
Yeah. And I like Ernie says sometimes the family is the last one they want. It's hard because some people want strangers. I don't want, someone might say, I don't want anyone to know me, that is here, and other people want family. So I think, between you and Ernie, I think you did a great job covering that. Okay. So we got literally just 2 minutes. I don't see any hands. You have my email if you need it again. Okay, so then someone's talking about Urban Ministries. How do you access the recording?
All of the recordings are archived on our website, worcesteracts.org. This one it takes a minute to, get it back from Zoom, but it should be up by tomorrow. And of course, we love it if you share. Each Trauma Training Tuesday has a page set up for itself. And I usually try to put any other resources I know of or heard of on that same page. So if you're impacted by the trauma, not only can you watch the video, you can find other resources. So, and I've, kind of gotten some from today. Thank you so much. And again, we hope that if you need your family to watch, now you have something to send your family members. You can send them this link. You can send professionals here. You can help people find resources, because that seems like one of the biggest issues. People just don't even know where to turn or what to do.
So I want to end by thanking Kelsey and thanking Amy for giving me the opportunity to speak. Beth, thank you for that. And I love what you said. Thank you, Kathy, and for all the participating. I always want to facilitate. I want to bring value, but I also want to bring out the value of the audience. So I really, I appreciate that you all listened to me and got value from me. And I also appreciate that you shared and got value from each other. And thank you all for participating. So I just want to end on that. Thank you so much. I've put my email a few times. Absolutely reach out to me with questions. If you want services, that's fine. But if you also just saying, crap, I just need to have a question, or just need a little bit of validation of what I'm going through, that's also okay to reach out to me. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks again for coming to Trauma Training Tuesday. Goodbye, friends.
Bye.
Bye.